here with you the basic principles of all those engagement in regard to the formation. Okay, so I think it's very clear now. Thank you so much, Father Rajesh. Okay, now yes. Last time, September 12 to 14, I attend the meeting of ABC, the Bishops of Asia, in Pattaya in Thailand. The meeting was discussed especially about synodal formation in Asia. Okay, and we came out with a final statement of the meeting, which was brought to Rome to be part of the ideas for the discussion of Synod on Synodality in Rome last October. Now, in this final statement, in regard to the synodal formation in Asia in different levels, in different vocations, in the sense of for consecrated persons, for the laity, for the clergy, there are two numbers. So number 3 and number 4 spell out in a very interesting point about the characteristics needed for our formation in Asia. Okay, the first one is a Christ-centered formation, and the second one in number 4, it emphasizes about the learner-oriented formation. For sure, as a final statement, we try to choose really precise words to express different ideas. So these two words, Christ-centered and learner-oriented, were chosen to really emphasize what should be the characteristic of formation, or synodal formation in Asia, especially today. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Now, the principal objective of this Christ-centered and learner-oriented formation is forming the people of God. You know, we were using the word people of God because the meeting was not only for consecrated life, but for different forms of life, different vocations. So for the laity, for the clergy, and for consecrated life. Now, the principal objective of this Christ-centered and learner-oriented formation is forming the people of God, or in our case, the consecrated people, to be missionary disciples. So this is one of the very interesting terminologies used in the meeting and also in the Synod of Synodality last time, October in Rome. Forming the people of God, or forming the consecrated people, consecrated persons, to be missionary disciples. We will see later what do we mean by missionary disciples. Next, Father Rajesh, sorry. This forming the people of God to be missionary disciples, as you can see in the final synthesis or synthesis report of Synod on Synodality, the first section, you know, pervades the second part of the synthesis report, number 8 to number 13. And number 10 in this synthesis report is dedicated specially to consecrated life. So in this second part of the synthesis report, of Synod on Synodality, you can see clearly that concern of forming the people of God, or in our case, forming the consecrated persons to be missionary disciples. Next. Now, as regards to Christ-centered formation, the synodal formation in Asia, I abbreviated SFA, and synthesis report specify two very interesting or very important things regarding religious formation. The first one is the need of forming and developing one's passion for Christ. So the need of building up, the need of developing, of forming in the consciousness of consecrated persons, the passion for Christ. And the second concern is the need of following the way how Jesus formed his disciples. If you read the synthesis report of Synod on Synodality, you can see these points, especially in number 14, the need of forming in the consciousness of each one of us the passion for Christ, our love for Christ, and the need, this is very important for our formation for sure, the need of following the way, the paradigm of formation of the disciples of Jesus, how Jesus formed them. Just to look back a little bit into the history of Jesus Christ. No, Jesus did not found a formal schools or institutes or seminaries to form his disciples. And the characteristic of the formation of Jesus' disciple was itinerant formation. Formation in mission. Their formation was not only formation for mission. It seems to like separate between the phase of formation to be able to do mission later. But the formation developed by Jesus was formation in mission. You know, formation in mission implies that learning the reality of mission. That all those realities found in mission should be the elements of the formation of these disciples. That is why, for example, if you remember the stories of how Jesus brought his disciples, how Jesus walked together with the disciples, how Jesus went to mission synodally, went with the disciples, and on the way, he taught them. Once again, not as a formal school, for sure, for us is needed because our context is different. But in the context of Jesus, that itinerant formation in mission is clearly done when Jesus tried to develop in the consciousness of the disciples those principal values of life. For example, if you want to be the first, you should be the last. If you want to be a good leader, you have to be a servant. These are some of Jesus' teaching, the content of Jesus' formation in mission for his disciples. So the Synod on Synodality, the synthesis report, and synodal formation in Asia, stated in our meeting with the bishops in Thailand, specify these two important things, forming in the consciousness of religious the passion for Christ and the need of following the paradigm of itinerant formation in mission. Okay, next, Father Rajesh, thank you. As regard to, sorry, as regard to learner oriented, before we speak about Christ Center formation, now let's see a little bit regarding the learner oriented formation. The synodal formation in Asia, SFA, and synthesis report of Synod on Synodality emphasize the core principle of being disciple as being learner. You know very well in Greek, disciple simathetes, which literally means a learner, the one who learns. Okay, so Synod on Synodality emphasizes this point of forming to be disciple, which means to be a learner, namely people who are always hungry and thirsty for Christ. This is very important, interesting, my brothers, because in many decades, in many course of the history, our formation is made through teaching, meaning to say we rely on what people teach to us. For sure, it's important. It's very important. But what this synod on synodality develop more is being a learner. Whether you are a formator or foreman, you have to be a learner. So this characteristic of mission, learner-oriented, emphasized by synod on synodality, teach us about that life is an opportunity to learn. So this reality or this conviction makes us able to reflect on what is the meaning of being formator. Being formator in this context is not primarily being teacher in the sense of the one who teach, but the one who learns. Who are the formans? In this context, the formans are not the objects, or in the sense of those who are learning from the teaching of the formators, but they are learners. All of us are learners. So that is the key point of why we have to work together. Because by nature, we are all disciples. What does it mean? We are all learners. We learn from each other. We learn from the context in which we are. We learn from Jesus. And this process of learning is made in the synodal formation in mission. But it doesn't mean, formation in mission does not mean that we have to bring all our formans to the missions. Not necessarily. Not necessarily to bring them, for example, to Basilan and forming them in the mission, in our missions in Basilan, in Zamboanga, in the north, in wherever. Not necessarily. Itinerant formation in mission means people, all of us learn from the context of our mission. Learn from our encounter. Learn from the cultural wisdoms in which we are. learn from the spiritualities of people in which we are. This process of learning is a synodal formation. Why? Because we are walking together to learn from each other. Not only in the sense of working together between formators and formants, but working with the people in which we are. That is why the taste of your formation in the Philippines can be different with the taste of your formation in Solomon Island or the taste of your formation in mission in Africa. The taste, the profile, the picture of your mission can be different. Why? Because your formation is made in mission. That's the thing. Next, Father Rajesh, thank you. If so, my dear brothers, Christ-centered and learner-oriented formation points to the same formative reality. Okay, if our formation in mission is an opportunity to learn, whether you are formator or formant, to learn from Jesus Christ, like the disciples, it means that we are formed to be entheos religious. Last time in our religious life week, in my talk, Father Luigi was there and two brothers. We discussed or we reflected on this point. The art or the beauty of being entheos religious. What does it mean? Let's see. Next. What does it mean to us to be or to be formed, to become entheos religious? Entheos from Greek, en means in, and theos, God. Okay, so entheos means in God or with God, or better, have the spark of God within. So entheos religious in this sense means a religious which or who have the spark of God within him or within her. And entheos, my dear brothers, are the Greek roots of our English word enthusiasm. So enthusiasm means the state of having the spark of God within. So enthusiasm is not simply that having that energy of doing things happily, but having that energy because God is within you. God is with you. God is in you. Or you are full of God. Or we are full of God. If we pray, Hail Mary, full of grace, Hail Mary, full of God. So, hail the servants of charity, full of God. So, our need today is in this point. Forming our consecrated persons, forming our religious, to be persons with spiritual enthusiasm. Forming persons who have the spark of God within them. Forming persons who are full of God. Okay? Next, Father. Thank you. Now, once again, entheos religious means religious who possess great spiritual and missionary enthusiasm and is full of divine passion. You know, process of great spiritual and missionary enthusiasm. like I said before, no, enthusiasm is not simply that energy of doing things with happily. For sure is part of it. But spiritual enthusiasm means person who live with God within him. Persons who live, who have spark of God within them, full of God. Persons who are full of God. Next. Once again, entheos religious means religious who is in God, has God with him. A religious who is full of God. Now let us take a minute of silence, my brothers. Let us make check to ourselves. Do you have the spark of God within you? Do you have God within? Are you an entheos religious? Are you an entheos servant of charity? Let us take 1 minute of silence. My brothers, are you still there?
Yes. Okay.
Thank you very much for faithfully listening to me. Now, can we make our formation as an opportunity in which we can form our consecrated persons to be persons full of God? That is really the question. Can we form consecrated persons nowadays to be persons full of God, full of passion for Christ, full of passion for their vocation, consecration, and mission? These questions are not simple, but for sure to be engaged seriously in our in our formation. Let us continue with other slides. Continue. Thank you. The main characteristic of an entheos religious, my dear brothers, like I said before, is having a great enthusiasm, a great love and passion in living his or her vocation, consecration, and mission. You know, this can be really a good paradigm to evaluate our formans also. You know, sometimes our evaluation on our formans just deal with some external things, some additional, for example, whether this person can play music or not, whether this person can sing or not, whether this person can wake up in the morning or not. I think this characteristic of entheos religious, that is having a great enthusiasm, love, and passion for living their vocation, can be a paradigm for evaluation. Do they have Christ within? Do they have that passion to live the life of Christ? Remember always that the principal aim of formation, religious formation, is conforming oneself to Christ. This is the principal or the basic aim of religious formation. If you see it in the documents, whether in Vatican II or post-Vatican II, especially in the Directives for Formation, 1994, Potessimum Institutioni, it's very clear that many things to be discussed, but the principal aim of religious formation is forming people to be conformed to Christ. That is why it's becoming very relevant and essential to raise this question. Can formation be an opportunity to develop in the consciousness of our consecrated people in our formants that passion for Christ, that passion with God, that enthusiasm, spiritual enthusiasm? Can we form ourselves? Can we form the consecrated persons nowadays? Can we form the servants of charity to be entheos religious? Religious who are full of God? These questions are very essential and not simple, but to be engaged seriously in whatever level is our formation. Next. Okay, this is very important. Communion with Christ remains as one of the major challenges for consecrated life in Asia today, I think in the world, okay? You know that the followers of Jesus are many, but only few can truly live in a deep intimacy with him. Only few can really have passion for Christ. Between 12 apostles, there is Judas Iscariot who shall betray Jesus. That's just a proof that many can be followers of Jesus, but only few can really have that passion of Christ. Many religious nowadays in Asia, continue next. You know, many religious in Asia, but do they have passion for Christ? You know, as of now, the problem of Asia is not lack of laborers. We still have many vocations for sure. Many in the sense of we still have vocation, because this vocation is for few, not for all. So if you have just 10 each year or even less than 10, is a good number already. So for me, our problem is not lack of laborers, but rather lack of entheos laborers, lack of enthusiastic religious, lack of entheos consecrated persons. Next. In regard to this problem in Asia, you know, in the second symposium of the Conference of Asian Bishops on 2007, there was a symposium. There are now 4 symposiums on consecrated life made in FBC. The second one was 2007. In regard to that passion of being follower or being religious without being entheos, the bishops say this very important statement. They say, We should dream not so much for the greatest number of vocations, but for suitable persons, no matter how few, who can be a creative minority, genuinely responding to the call to radicality and sacrifice. By so doing, they assume a lifestyle so totally free, so emptied of worldly attachments, because so totally enamored by the Lord. I think this statement is very important and very beautiful. And it could be really a paradigm for our formation. You know, concerning on having a lot of followers of Jesus, but not all of them, or only few have passion of Christ. A lot of religious in Asia today, but probably only few can really have that passion for Christ. The bishop say this: do not dream of greatest number of vocations, but dream for suitable persons. No matter how few, who can be a creative minority, genuinely, or in my terminology, passionately responding to the call to radicality and sacrifice. By so doing, they assume a lifestyle so totally free. So being enamored by God, seduced by God, fascinated by God, to have that experience of Christ, being enamored, being fascinated, being seduced by God, do we develop that passion for Christ or passion for God as the principal paradigm of our formation? Do we develop in our consciousness, on the consciousness of our formants, the consciousness of consecrated person, how important is that having passion for Christ, being enamored by Christ? Next. Almost finished, huh? Like I said, the root cause of this being religious without being entheos is actually the lack of passion for Christ. What do we mean by passion? Passion is an intense enthusiasm for loving God and loving our religious vocation. Next. Now, just there are at least now 188,000 consecrated persons in Asia today, yeah, according to the latest what is this statistic. There at least 180,000 consecrated persons in Asia, and around 71,000 priests, diocesan priests, okay, in Asia. Now, our question is, do all these consecrated persons, 188,000 and 71,000 clergy, priests, diocesan priests, have the spark of God within? Having in their consciousness of that life, that consecrated life is life, a committed life, in the sense of life totally enamored by God. This can be a good a question for our reflection. Okay. Now, the next question is actually, how can we engage with this Christ-centered and learner-oriented formation in order to form the religious, especially in Asia, to be missionary disciples? How can we engage? Let's see. This is already the last point. Next. You know, how to engage with that that formation, that learn a Christ-centered and learner-oriented formation to form people to be missionary disciples. For sure, there are a lot of answers that you can propose. Okay, let me just underline three important words, keywords used by the synthesis report of Synod on Synodality. You can find it in number 14. There are many words there, but these three are, for me, are very important. The first one is, okay, sorry. The first one is co-responsibility. It appears 14 times along the report. The second one is listening, appears 43 times in the report, and discernment 29 times. You know, what do we mean by engaging with the attitude of responsibility, listening, and discernment in forming synodally our consecrated persons in Asia today? You know, co-responsibility, okay, co-responsibility always always related to that attitude of giving space to each one of us, to each one of our formants, to each one of our members of the community, to each one of the members of the congregation. So responsibility is not assumed by one person only, but by all. So formation, like I said before, is not teaching oriented in the sense of the formants are obliged to listen to the teaching. For sure, it's important, but understanding it in the context of a synodality, formation is co-responsibility. If you go to the document, the directives of formation, for formation, a Potissimum Institutione, you can see there who is the first formator, the formants themselves. So meaning to say, formation should be a way of responsibility, meaning to say, giving space to each one to grow in engaging with the passion for Christ and passion for our own vocation, consecration, and mission. Co-responsibility is just the synonym of giving opportunity to each one to be grown, engaging together, and listening. You know, this is, I think, the number one keyword of synodality: listening to the Holy Spirit, listening to each other, listening to the reality, listening to all reality. Now, there is no formation without listening. Okay? There is no formation without listening. Why? You know, in the context of forming missionary disciples, okay, in the context of forming missionary disciples, I said to you at the beginning already that we are called to be learners. You cannot learn without listening. So listening is the basic attitude for learning. What does it mean by listening? Listening is not just that that act or attitude of opening our ears. Listening is more than that. listening is involving in the spirit, in the feelings and the thinking of others, involving in the reality of others. I told you already in the, I saw on Facebook, my dear brothers, one little boy in one room with his father, and the boy wants to talk with the father, and the father was busy playing the gadget, the mobile, the handphone, very busy. And the little boy said, "Dad, I want to talk to you." And his father said, "Yes, please talk to me. I'm listening." But since he is engaging with the mobile, and the little boy said, "No, father, you have to listen to me by or with your eyes." That is a listening. Listening, engaging with the reality of others. Listening is involving in the feeling, in the thinking of others, of the reality in which we are. And discernment. What do we mean by this? You understand perfectly this word. No need to explain too much. But what I want to underline here is that many times our discernment is made in a wrong way. Why? But because many times in our discernment, we raise too much question to God. Discernment is raising or dipping down your questions to the very bottom of your existence. Why I am choosing to be servant of charity? Why I am here in the congregation? I mean, discernment, a true discernment, not raising up our questions to the cloud, but dipping them down to the very bottom of our consciousness. When we make that kind of discernment, we find ourselves. And that discernment can help us to engage better, to live passionately our missionary vocation, our discipleship. Okay? So, my dear brothers, that is the only thing I can say to you. I am so sorry if I cannot satisfy what you expected from me. Thank you very much, Father Luigi and all my dear brothers. And you know already that the only thing I can say this time is this point. But I love you and I love your congregation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Father Gusti.